This is CBS Sports HQ. I'm Chris Hassel. This is College Football Happy Hour. We're going to pick every ranked game against the spread with Danny Kanell and Sportsline's Emery Hunt. And this slate this week highlighted by a top 20 matchup on CBS between A&M and Arkansas. Now, 5 of the last 6 times they have met at Jerry World, where they're meeting again this week, the game has gone to overtime. Tommy Tran gets us ready for the big matchup of the weekend.
The SEC is loaded once again in 2021, but not many thought Arkansas would be undefeated come week 4, playing in a game with playoff ramifications. Saturday afternoon, the Hogs will play perhaps their most meaningful game in a decade against Texas A&M. Coming into the year, the Razorbacks weren't ranked at all since 2016, but they certainly showed the strides they made as a program under head coach Sam Pittman in week 2 against Texas.
Green gets the call. He's got room inside the 25, inside the 20. Green's going to the house. Touchdown, Arkansas!
For Texas A&M, they were expected to be a playoff contender coming into this season, but they faced some adversity in week 2 on the road against Colorado when they lost their quarterback Haynes King due to injury. And down late, their backup signal caller Zach Calzada came up clutch.
Calzada in the pocket, rolls to his left, floater for Spiller, touchdown, Aggies!
After Jimbo Fisher's contract extension made him the second highest paid coach in college football behind Nick Saban, that came with expectations to be a contender year in and year out. So will Fisher and the Aggies stay on track 2 weeks prior to a potentially massive home game against Alabama? Or will the Razorbacks get off to a 4-0 start for the first time since 2003? We're in for a big-time clash in Arlington Saturday afternoon on CBS.
A lot of intrigue for that one. 3:30 Eastern on CBS. I'm Chris Hassel, joined by Danny Kanell. We also have Sportsline expert Emery Hunt here. We're going to pick every college football ranked game against the spread. This is the class of the games this weekend. A&M, we kind of have question marks about the quarterback position there. Arkansas, I think there's a lot of fans out there that maybe other than that Texas game, we just haven't seen much from them.
Yeah, that's why I think this game, there's an opportunity here, because we heard Tommy Tran here talking about the programs. I think Texas A&M is at a different place than Arkansas is right now, which is why they're a favorite in this game. But I'm going to go ahead and take the Aggies and lay the points here. This is a team that was really thrown a curveball when we saw Haynes King, their starting quarterback, come out of that game against Colorado. They eked out of there. So I think people are looking at this team saying, man, well, what's wrong with Texas A&M? They've changed quarterbacks after just 2 games. Last week against New Mexico, got on track. Zach Calzada got some confidence, made some nice throws in that game. But this is about the defense for me. This Texas A&M defense is legit. They're only giving up 5.7 points per game. That is number 1 in the country. I think they're going to have a field day. I think they can all come up on the line of scrimmage, try to slow down Arkansas's run game. I think that'll be too much for KJ Jefferson to try to ask him to hit Treylon Burks through the air and win a game through the air. So I like Texas A&M, lay the points, and I also like the under, because I do think Arkansas's defense can make this a little bit uglier. It's not like Texas A&M is going to be slinging it all over the yard. So give me the Aggies and give me the under.
We already starting off on the right foot, Danny, because I'm on the other side with this pick. I like Arkansas in the points here. I'm a big fan of KJ Jefferson and what he brings to the table. I think when you're playing against a very tough defense like he'll see against A&M, you have to be able to bring something extra to the table, and his extra is his ability as a +1 in the run game, and he's also able to connect on those deep shots that they'll take down the field coming off play action. His body physically reminds me a lot of Steve McNair, and I think his toughness is just like that as well. We'll see if the passing can be what that was when McNair was at Alcorn State, but I do feel like this game tends to get out of hand. So I like the score going back and forth. I see this being an over type game, so take the over as well. But I also like Arkansas here. They have to focus on this game. This is the 1 game schedule for them because they have so many ranked opponents left to play. So I'm taking Arkansas on the points, but I also like the over.
Historically, this game has been really close. 5 of the last 6 at Jerry World, which is where they're playing this one, have gone to overtime. But Texas A&M is going for its 10th straight win in this series. Arkansas, by the way, hasn't even made a bowl game since 2016. They've come a long way. They passed the big test against Texas, but that was in Fayetteville at home. We'll see what they do here on a neutral field. All right, another neutral field matchup, this one in Chicago. Wisconsin is giving 6 against Notre Dame. Danny, I was a little bit surprised to see how many points the Badgers had to give, considering the fact that this game is not in Madison.
Yeah, and we were talking about it. I think this is the right side to be on with Wisconsin, though, because I think the odds makers are looking at Notre Dame and they're saying, man, that Florida State win on the road in Tallahassee looked great, right? Florida State looked like they were physical up front, but now as we're watching Florida State off to an 0-3 start, and you're watching Notre Dame struggle with Toledo, which a game they should have lost if Toledo had handled the clock better in that one. Then they, it's not like they were world beaters against Purdue. They did win that game, but they have not been dominant yet. I'm going to take Wisconsin here, lay the points. I think there's a stat that I have for you. You got to watch out for Graham Mertz. All you have to do if you're Graham Mertz, do not throw an interception. I would strongly suggest finding Kyle Hamilton, the incredible defender for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Do not throw it his way and protect that football. And then this Wisconsin defense, Jim Leonard's one of the better defensive coordinators. I think they can contain Jack Cohn, and this is an exceptional battle of quarterbacks. Jack Cohn's in Notre Dame, where he came from. Wisconsin is there. The revenge factor is in play for him. But I ultimately still believe the Wisconsin Badgers here are the team to go with. The game against Penn State early in the season, I thought they could have won that game. Now, credit to Penn State. We've seen what they did.
They should have won that game.
Yes, but going toe-to-toe with that Penn State team, I think is an incredible battle test for them. So I actually like the Badgers here. Chez Maluzzi, too, is the story of the season for him. First running back to go start his first two games and go over 100-plus in his first two games since Corey Clement back in 2013 for the Badgers. So I think you're going to see a heavy dose of him going after that Notre Dame defense.
I don't even know what the weather is going to be like in that game, but I'm pretty sure when you say two physical teams like this, it's going to be overcast. It's in Chicago. I expect an ugly game. So I expect this game to go under the total, but I also feel like both defenses will be the story here. I think both match up well against either defense. So I see a game that's going to be tight to the wire. It's going to be low scoring. I do like Wisconsin to win the game, but I also like Notre Dame in the points here. I think we're going to see a field goal type game as opposed to a touchdown type game because I am big on Graham Mertz. I think he's a better quarterback than Jack Cohn, but I just like both defenses a little bit more than both offenses. So look for this game to go under, but a field goal will separate these two, not a touchdown.
iPhone weather app says sunny, high of 70 for that noon Eastern time kickoff between Notre Dame and Wisconsin. Perfect weather in the Midwest for that game, though Wisconsin is 0 for their last 4 against ranked teams, and Graham Mertz has yet to throw a touchdown pass this season, but 6-point favorites in that one. All right, moving on to a matchup of unbeatens. Yeah, West Virginia is, well, perfect this season. 3-0, they beat Maryland. Oklahoma, close calls against Nebraska and Tulane. I got to backtrack a second because West Virginia lost to Maryland to begin the season. But Oklahoma is giving 16.5 at home. Spencer Rattler just, Danny, has not looked like that Heisman favorite that we had coming into the season.
No, 23 points against Nebraska. That's the lowest offensive output that we've seen since Lincoln Riley's been the head coach there. And it's been hard to figure out. I ultimately think Caleb Williams is the guy for Oklahoma. I know Spencer Rattler came in with a ton of fanfare, but he has not lived up to the hype there in Norman. That being said, I do think this is the game where Oklahoma gets back on track. West Virginia has not had much success in this game, especially when it's played in Norman. They've lost the last 2 by a combined 66 points. That's 33 points average there. That's way enough to get to the cover here. West Virginia, nice season. That was a signature win for Neil Brown against Virginia Tech, but they needed a goal line stand to eke that out. I do wonder if West Virginia was 1-2 coming into this spot, how much that would change this line, get it up close to 21. I think Oklahoma gets right in this game. I think the offense finally gets humming. I think they're tired of hearing all the critics say, what is happening here? I think Oklahoma at home has their breakout game against West Virginia.
I'm taking West Virginia in the points here, and I like the over as well. I find it interesting that this year we're talking more about Big 12 defenses. I feel like every team in the Big 12 is starting to play some really good defense. Unfortunately, to Danny's point, Spencer Rattler and that Oklahoma offense just hasn't looked right all season long. I think that's going to be a window for West Virginia to take advantage. I think they've been solid within the front 7 under Neil Brown. That defense has really been good. And I like the matchup here against Oklahoma. I feel like West Virginia will come out here and really push the tempo and push the pace and try to control the line of scrimmage. And they're going to force a turnover or 2 from Spencer Rattler. That Oklahoma offense seems to get it going in the second half. By that time, now you're in a nail biter. And I do think that we'll see this one go tightly down to the wire again, but I do like the over here, but take West Virginia in the points.
You guys just can't agree.
We got to have some sort of wager on the total of all these picks. We'll add them up. I'll take Emory to dinner somewhere. We'll figure out something. Or he's buying from me.
West Virginia 0-10 on the road against top 10 teams since Y2K, losing by an average of 21 points. Moving on to Iowa State, a team that we've kind of moved on from because of how bad they've looked to start the season. You can't judge much from that blowout win against UNLV. A tough way to start Big 12 play. You got to go on the road to Baylor, and Iowa State's given 6.5.
The best news about this, though, is they finally got Brock Purdy going for Iowa State this past weekend. Granted, it was against a less than stellar opponent, but he did have a few touchdowns, and he was off to an abysmal start to this season, and he even had a trend going back to last year where he had not surpassed 200 yards, where he finally had that breakout game. And I think that was a big confidence booster for him. They won 48-3 against UNLV, and in large part, it's also because of the back in the backfield. Breece Hall now has a touchdown in 15 straight games, but Brock Purdy, 37 career touchdown passes. He had 3 in this past game. Finally had like the dialed-in game where he had 87% completion percentage. Baylor's a nice team. I think Dave Aranda clearly has them headed in the right direction, but Iowa State in a class by themselves in this matchup. So lay the points for me with Iowa State on the road.
So that means Emory's probably going to go with Baylor and the other side of things, right?
Actually, I do like Iowa State to win, but I am more focused on this over number. I feel like that's a low number. We'll see Iowa State continue to get right offensively with Brock Purdy. I agree with Danny there. I'm glad he had the game he had last weekend against UNLV. The reason why I stayed away from the point total, because this game to me can get a little bit wacky. And I like the special teams mostly of Baylor with Tristan Ebner. This guy to me is the best kickoff returner in the country. I wish they give him more carries in the backfield, but anytime he touches the football, he has a chance to go score. But I do think Iowa State is just much more ahead of the curve offensively. They're getting back on track, and I can trust them a little bit more. But I definitely think that 47.5 number is way too low for this game, so I'm going over.
It's definitely low for a Big 12 game, but two good defenses. Neither team has allowed over 300 yards of offense at all this season. Another Big 12 matchup, this one between unbeaten teams. K-State into the rankings at number 25 at Oklahoma State. Danny, both teams 3-0.
So do you guys realize today is the 14-year anniversary of Mike Gundy's "I'm a man, I'm 40" rant against the media? That's all I need to hear. I'm taking Oklahoma State. Give me the Cowboys in this game. In all seriousness, this team did go on the road, beat Boise State last week. Spencer Sanders, who had been banged up a little bit early in the season, missed some time. Now he's back to full speed. Oklahoma State's defense really has been one of the unsung heroes the last several years. Their offense has been what has struggled as of late, but the defense, I think, carries them. Kansas State has been a nice story this season, but since they lost their quarterback, Skylar Thompson, they have not been as potent as they were with him healthy. The good news is he's not going to be lost for the entire season, but without him, give me Oklahoma State here.
Defense wins the game, man. I feel like this is going to be another defensive battle between both teams. I'm a big Deuce Vaughn's fan of the diminutive running back for Kansas State, but Danny's right. The offense for Oklahoma State just hasn't been right. They just can't get anything going. And Kansas State's offense without Skylar Thompson has been a struggle bus, but defensively, they're assignment sound. They execute. They do a great job of turning the ball over. I think we're going to see two sputtering offenses and two excellent defenses. So I'm taking Kansas State in the points, but I'm also taking the under.
Danny on the other side of things, again, because he likes Oklahoma State, simply because it's 14 years to the day since we heard this.
Because he does everything right and may not play as well on Saturday, and you let us make that decision. That's why I don't read the newspaper, because it's garbage, and the editor that let it come out is garbage. Attacking an amateur athlete for doing everything right. And then you want to write articles about guys that don't do things right and downgrade them, the ones that do make plays. Are you kidding me? Where are we at in society today? Come after me. I'm a man. I'm 40. I'm not a kid. Write something about me.
He's 54 years old now, Danny.
Wow. That's an all-timer. He was defending his player. That's the thing that I think most people forget about, and I think that went a long way in his locker room, that he was sticking up for his guy.
Emory, what'd you say?
I'm 40, by the way.
You're 40?
He could make the rent. He's a man. He's 40.
Wow, Emery, I would have guessed 30. You look young for that age, buddy boy.
Hey, man, black don't crack, man. Black don't crack.
Look at these guys. Just
Holy cow.
complete opposites on, well, almost everything except the under in that Wisconsin-Notre Dame game. And Emery doesn't have a pick against the spread in Iowa State against Baylor, but if he was leaning toward one, it would be toward Iowa State. Up next, we're jumping to the SEC. After failing to cover the number against Florida and barely escaping the swamp, Alabama given nearly half 100 at home. Big old spreads in the SEC this week, especially for the ranked versus unranked matchups. The biggest one, obviously, Texas A&M and Arkansas. We picked that one a little bit ago. Now we're going to pick the ranked on unranked. Ole Miss, by the way, has this weekend off before the showdown next Saturday at Bama on CBS. I'm Chris Hassel, joined by Danny Kanell and Emery Hunt. We're going to pick all the rest of the SEC games here involving ranked teams, and Alabama is favored by 45 points at home against Southern Miss. Is 45 enough, Daniel?
Nope, it is not. Go ahead and lay the points in this one, especially considering what happened last week. I think, Nick Saban, he always is trying to motivate his players. He tries to yell at them after they have a close game, or not even a close game, a poor performance against Akron. So then he comes back, he's screaming at them, but he actually feels relieved. Well, this one's on the players. They're going to say, you know what? We saw we can get beat if we don't play to our level, our expectation. On the flip side, Southern Miss against Troy last week. Anybody know how many rushing yards they had versus Troy? -1. You think they're going to have anything versus Alabama's defense who's going to be salty after getting pushed around from the Florida Gators? I think this is a game that the Alabama Crimson Tide roll on offense. I don't think Southern Miss does anything on the offensive side of the ball. So I like to lay the points, and I also take the under. I think this is going to be a classic 49-3, maybe if you get that field goal, complete blowout for the Crimson Tide.
See, I'm a Will Hall guy, so I'm hoping that Southern Miss can show up. Because I remember a time, you guys remember this, when Southern Miss was essentially college football's version of the Baltimore Ravens. No one wanted to play Southern Miss. Now everyone wants to get them on the schedule because they haven't been as good as they should be in recent years. But I do feel as though we'll see them score some points against Alabama. I like Alabama to win in a rout, but big points with Alabama when they love to pull guys off the field and put some reserves in there once it gets out of hand quickly. So Alabama may have 45 points in the first half, but we know that second half is going to be all Southern Miss, and that's going to also push the over to where it covers as well. So I'm taking Southern Miss and the points, and I'm also going over this total.
All right, Emery going out on a limb there. Southern Miss already has double-digit losses to Troy and South Alabama. Let's move on to the number 2 team in the country, the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, they're in SEC play, but they are still giving 5 touchdowns, -35 at Vanderbilt. Danny, it's the most Georgia has been favored by in an SEC game in 40 years.
Have you seen Vanderbilt play this year?
I have.
All right, so yeah. So, and this is our guy Barton Simmons, formerly here at CBS Sports and the part of the Cover 3 podcast, now general manager. I want to say they have a chance, but they have no chance in this game. Georgia is getting right. JT Daniels back healthy, had a nice rebound game last week. Their defense is the best defense in the country. I feel bad for Ken Seals, the quarterback for Vanderbilt, who is going to be a punching bag. He's going to be like the crash test dummy this weekend for Vanderbilt playing quarterback. He's thrown an interception in 10 of the last 12 games. I think that trend kind of continues. I think he struggles. The one area I do think that I would also attack besides Georgia and laying the points is the over. I think Georgia will have a field day, but I do think Vanderbilt will kind of want to try to put up some points later in the game. I think this is one of those backdoor covers, but I think Georgia's going to keep putting up points on the scoreboard all day long.
This is a tricky one for me because I do love Georgia to roll in this one. I actually think they shut out Vanderbilt. So they would have to get this 53 points all by themselves. I just don't know, man. I don't think they'll be able to do it. So I'm going to take Georgia. I'm going to lay the points with Georgia, taking it under. Vanderbilt will put up a fight for the first 8 minutes of the game, and that'll be enough to keep Georgia from scoring, 53 points. But I do think they'll get to 35. They may even win 38-0 or something like that. But I don't trust them to go over that number. They will legitimately have to keep pouring it on against a punchless Vanderbilt team. So I will say take the under.
All right, both on Georgia, but the numbers in the SEC the last 30 years would say go the other way. Favorites of 35 or more in SEC play, just 4-13 against the spread. All right, moving on to Tennessee and Florida. What used to be a rivalry, now a one-sided old rivalry, and Florida is giving 20. Question for Tennessee is who plays quarterback?
Yeah, Joe Milton or Hendon Hooker, as they've been kind of having a revolving door there, some injuries as well. But with Hendon Hooker, they've been a little bit more run-oriented. Get things back on track last week. Really impressive win against Tennessee Tech. Florida, very physical matchup against Alabama. Come oh so close to pulling off that upset at home. But you know what? Florida has been running the football. Emory Jones, Malik Davis, that combo quarterback running back duo, 1,009 yards through 3 games. That's the most rushing yards through 3 games Florida has had in the last 40 years. I think they get physical up front. I think they control the line of scrimmage. I think they shut down Tennessee. I take Florida, lay the 20, and I also like the under because I don't think Tennessee is going to have much success. I'll remind you, Pitt beat Tennessee in Knoxville earlier this season. I think this is a massive rebuild year for Tennessee. They're still figuring things out. I think Florida exploits them.
I think we may see 4 quarterbacks in this game. If Richardson is healthy, they're going to play him in addition to Emory Jones. But on the other side, we may even see both guys, Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton. I like Tennessee's pace and how they operate their offense. They're still trying to figure it out, like Danny talked about. But I see this 20 points from Florida. I'm like, well, what Florida team do you expect to show up? You know, this is someone that I think this team is getting the benefit of what they did last week against Alabama. And that could be tricky because they lost in a heartbreaking way by not getting that 2-point conversion. So we could see a situation where last week's loss becomes this week's problem. So I'm saying 20 points is too much. Take Tennessee in the points, but I do agree with Danny. I like the under here.
Florida's won 15 to the last 16. They haven't lost to Tennessee in the Swamp in almost 20 years. 2003 was the last time. All right, Auburn, home on the Plains against not Georgia, but Georgia State. Georgia State picked up its first win last week. Danny, they went in and beat a Charlotte team that blew out Duke, or not blew out Duke, but a Charlotte team that beat Duke earlier this season.
Yeah, I think Auburn, I'm very curious to see how Auburn reacts to this. Big stage last week, one of the best environments we've seen on the season with the whiteout. They're in Happy Valley. Now Auburn kind of has to regroup, and they have to come back and showcase. They can get emotionally just as amped up for a weaker opponent. I don't trust them yet in this situation. I think Auburn wins the game. Bo Nix has been playing a little bit better. He's still developing under Brian Harson's system. But I think Georgia State has enough to kind of hang around, keep this one within the number. So give me Georgia State plus the 27 in a lower scoring affair because I think both these teams, I think Auburn's going to want to run the football with Tank Bigsby toting the rock. So I'll take Georgia State points and the under as well.
Appreciate Danny showing some love to the Sun Best Conference, you know, the Power 7 conference of the Sun Belt football. But I look at Georgia State. I like their secondary, so I do think they can compete out there on the perimeter. But I don't trust their offense. They've been highly inconsistent, and I think that's going to keep them from hitting the over or covering. But I do think Auburn can hit that over number as well. When you look at what they've done, they can do a good job of playing with tempo, playing with pace. They can also slow it down and grind it out. But I do feel like we saw them get 60 points on Alabama State, and Alabama State scored 10. So that kept them underneath that number. But I feel like this is a team with that secondary that they're going to play is going to keep them a little bit under. So I was lay those points with Auburn, but I'm going under because I don't trust Georgia State's offense, but I do trust them enough to where they can keep this from approaching the total, but they'll get blown out.
All right, looking at Georgia State's schedule, I mentioned that they beat Charlotte by 11. They lost to North Carolina by 40+. They lost to Army by 30+. So we'll see if they can get inside that number against Auburn. Emory, Danny, thank you so much. Let's recap the picks from the SEC ranked v. unranked games. And finally, a little bit of an agreement, I guess. No, Georgia is the only agreement there, minus 35 at Vanderbilt. Crazy that in conference a team can be on the road and favored by 35, but that is life as a Vanderbilt Commodore right now. Up next, the Buckeyes looking to get the offense rolling. They've got a game against the Zips, and that should do the trick. But can they cover the 7-touchdown spread?
Well, we've got some exciting Big Ten action this week in college football. Number 5 ranked Iowa hosting Colorado State. Number 10 Ohio State. They're going to welcome Akron over there. The Rutgers, the birthplace of college football, taking on number 19 Michigan, and the Cornhuskers traveling to Michigan State, ranked at number 27. Big Ten teams currently ranked in the top 20. Welcome back to College Football Happy Hour. I'm Jenny Dell. Now we're picking every ranked game against the spread, and right now we're focusing on the Big Ten. Danny Kanell on set. We also are joined by Sportsline Emery Hunt. So the Hawkeyes continuing their hot start as they play host to Colorado State. Iowa playing their second game in a row at Kinnick Stadium as a top 5 team nationally, and just their third such game since 1985. The Hawkeyes 23-point favorites. Over/under set at 44.5. Danny, are we looking at a big blowout here?
So, Jenny, we talked earlier about Vanderbilt, how bad Vanderbilt was. Yeah. Well, guess who beat Colorado State? Vanderbilt beat them. Iowa is going to roll big in this game. Iowa's defense has been the story of the season early this week. A couple pick sixes against Michael Penix earlier in the season against Indiana. We've seen what they're capable of doing. Kirk Ferentz squad is so disciplined when they're on the field. I think this will be a tune-up game for them. Spencer Petras is having a nice season so far. Tyler Goodson is running the ball. I think you'll see more of that for the Hawkeyes. So go ahead and lay the points. And then I also, because of that defense, I think Iowa manhandles Colorado State, and I also think Colorado State doesn't put many points up on the board. And it's not like Iowa is prolific throwing around the ball, quick drives. They methodically drive down the field. So I think they win handsomely. Lay the points, and I also like an under with Iowa controlling this game from start to finish.
I do like the under, Danny. I agree with you there, but I'm taking Colorado State in the points. I think the best way to avoid getting blown out, and I'm speaking from experience, you just have to take the air out of the football. That's what Colorado State is going to come in here and try to do. They're going to try to run the football, whether they gain a lot of yards or not. They do have some good athleticism in the backfield. They have a great point of attack offense. They utilize a lot of tight ends, and they get those guys involved in the run game. We're going to see this team try to shrink this ball game and not allow Iowa to have many possessions. So I do think they'll get under that 23-point cover and keep this one closer than they think. They may lose by 20, but not 23. But definitely that number is going under as well.
I was told there wasn't much of you two agreeing on this, so I'm glad I come on set and
you.
look what happens.
That's right.
Everyone's just getting along. And I was covering that Vandy Colorado State game, Danny, and it was rough to watch. So we'll see how this one goes. Now, we talk about a spread. How about 49 points? That's how much number 10 ranked Ohio State is favored over Akron. The Buckeyes get the Zips in prime time under the lights at the shoe. Over/under set at 67.5. Danny, will Akron even get on the board? What do you think?
Watch out, Jenny. I want you to know Akron has actually beaten Ohio State before.
When?
1894 was the last time they beat them. I do not think they get on the board. This is a team that lost by 50 to Auburn. Who do you think is better, Auburn or Ohio State? Ohio State is the better team. I also think Ohio State, coming off a performance where you had C.J. Stroud was a little bit, his shoulder's been bothering him. Travion Henderson goes off for 277. I think they want to see C.J. Stroud get back on track with all those weapons on the outside. I think they want to get him back in that Heisman race. And it doesn't matter, even if they go to his backup, Kyle McCord. I think he has a field day. The backups probably will be playing the whole entire second half, but guess what they're going to be doing? Running up and down the field. So lay the 50. I think they're begging you to take that 49 points, lay the points. And I also, on this one, I don't have a play on the total. I'm not trusting that one because I think Ohio State could score 70 to kind of get rid of some of their offensive woes. So I'm going to stay away from the total, but I like the Buckeyes.
Listen, we had this thing in college called Beat Me Last, where you're only good as your last game. It didn't matter if it was football, Madden, or whatever. That's where Akron messed up. After 1884, they should have never tried to call Ohio State again. Lose that number. You got the win. No need to play them anymore. But I'm laying those points with Ohio State, and I'm also trusting the over. I think we may see this game end up being 63-7. That gives you the cover, and it also gives you the over. Ohio State wins big against Akron.
All right, we're expecting a little bit of a closer game in this next Big Ten matchup. Both Rutgers and Michigan undefeated this season. It seems like Harbaugh's team has a more efficient offense and a better defense, but you never know. Michigan at minus 18.5 at home, over/under set at 51.5. Danny, what do you think here?
So I'm looking at this game. Michigan, I'm a believer in what they're doing this year. It feels like they're implementing the scheme offensively that Jim Harbaugh wanted to see when he took over from the beginning. Running the football, playing smash mouth football, running it, play action pass. But quietly, Greg Schiano is building up this Rutgers program the same way he did in his previous regime, which is why they're 3-0 for the first time since he was there last. So I like the way this Rutgers football team is playing. Both teams are playing fantastic football because they're protecting the football. Rutgers is #1 in the country in turnover ratio. They're not coughing it up. Neither is Michigan. Cade McNamara's not had a turnover yet on the season. I think this is a pretty clean game. I think it's a defensive game, so I'm going to take Nebraska and the points here on the road, but I also really like the under in this one with a couple defense, kind of your classic. I know Rutgers hasn't been in Big Ten long, but a classic Big Ten smash mouth type of game, so give me the under as well.
Danny, guess what? We agree on something. I agree with you on both points. And if we remember back last year, I feel like this was the game that kind of put Rutgers back on the map and saying, hey, we can compete in the Big Ten, because this game went to overtime, I believe, but it was a very close game. And you're right, two excellent defensive football teams, two teams that really played close to the vest. Both are vastly improved over last year, getting very good quarterback play. Both teams are, and they can run the football. So I will take Rutgers in the points and also say go under. This is going to be a fantastic old school 11 a.m. Big Ten game that we used to get back in the day. I like this matchup completely.
Nothing makes me happier than fake confetti.
Right? It puts you in a good mood, right?
So you can't not smile. All right, we got another Big Ten conference matchup. Nebraska heading to East Lansing to take on number 20 Michigan State. The Cornhuskers enter the game at 2-2 on the season following a really tough loss at number 3 Oklahoma on Saturday. The Spartans are 5-point favorites this weekend. Over/under is set at 52. How do you think this one plays out?
You know what Emory and I need on the tail end of our names? We need like the 3rd or the 4th. Like Kenneth Walker, the 3rd for Michigan State, who had an incredible game last week against Miami Hurricanes. Peyton Thorne, his quarterback, is having an incredible season so far this year. I think Michigan State, Mel Tucker has this team absolutely balling. I think it's one of the surprises of the season. Nebraska, on the other hand, they're feeling good about a loss, which tells you everything you need to know about the Nebraska Cornhusker program right now. Granted, there was some moral victories to be taken away from that loss to Oklahoma, but it was still a loss. Meanwhile, Michigan State, off to a 3-0 start, look like they're playing a whole lot better. I'm going to take Michigan State here, playing with a lot of confidence. Sparty is. I'm going to take Michigan State. I'm going to lay the points. And I do think this goes over the total because I think Michigan State's going to score points against Nebraska. But Adrian Martinez has just enough moxie in him to kind of keep this game a little bit closer, maybe get some garbage time points in the second half, keep it within around that touchdown. So give me Michigan State and the over in this game.
You know, Nebraska, yeah, they're feeling good about themselves. And, you know, just like if you're beating a 50-year-old Roy Jones, yeah, you knocked out Roy Jones, but he's 50. You know, so I think they're going to come into this ball game and get hip checked by Michigan State. So laying those points with the Spartans, but I also feel like this will go under. Nebraska has been sort of a pesky team. They'll fight and they'll play inspired ball at some point in this ball game to where you're actually going to believe to yourself that, man, they can come back, they can win this game. And then Nebraska takes over, and then the other team just goes ahead and cruises. So I see this going under, but definitely looking for Michigan State to cover.
All right, you two. I feel like I came on and there's been some agreement between, but we have a lot more to talk about. Let's take a look at those picks that you had here. So really a lot of agreeing with the Rutgers at Michigan game that's going to be happening. But we have a little bit of a difference of opinion when it comes to Nebraska at Michigan State. Emory likes the under. Danny, you like the over there. Overall, though, solid work, you two.
Yeah.
Plenty of more to go, so don't go anywhere. We're talking Pac-12 and ACC next. The Oregon Ducks playing host to Arizona in the first conference game for both teams. Don't go anywhere. Our college football picks continue with the Pac-12 and the ACC. Arizona headed to take on the Ducks. Oregon ranked at number 3. UCLA and Stanford expected to be a close one there. Clemson slipping down the ranks, now at number 9 as they'll head out to NC State. And number 21 ranked North Carolina, favored by 21 over Georgia Tech. Welcome back to College Football Happy Hour. We're picking every ranked game against the spread. I'm Jenny Dell. We got Danny Kanell. We also have Sportsline's Emery Hunt. All right, let's speed through these ones. We're going to start with the 0-3 Arizona Wildcats traveling to take on number 3 ranked Oregon, a team who is undefeated, and that includes a win over the Ohio State University. Quite the spread here. Ducks are favored by 28.5, over under a set at 58.5. Danny, what do you got?
Go ahead and lay the points. Don't even think about this one. Jetfish at Arizona, it's been a dumpster fire early. They've lost 0-3 start. They've lost 15 games in a row. It has not been pretty. Oregon, on the flip side, though, has been really outstanding. Obviously, we know about the Ohio State game, but what they're doing on both sides of the ball, physical, getting after it. And don't look now, but C.J. Verdell, their running back, is starting to creep up some of the Heisman candidate list, the odds. He's starting to climb up the board. And I also, just something to put in the back of your mind, Ty Thompson, the true freshman quarterback, did play a little bit last year. I like Anthony Brown, but I don't mind the 2-quarterback system potentially being something that could help Oregon navigate this Pac-12 schedule throughout the latter portion of the season. So give me the Ducks, lay the points. This is more about Arizona being a disaster at this point, though.
Exactly. I'm laying the points with Oregon, and I'm also taking the over. Arizona lost to Northern Arizona in the FCS, which is not a good FCS team this year because it got broken down and beat down by Sam Houston earlier in the season. So this is a bad football team. So definitely lay all those points and take the over with Oregon.
You talk about Arizona, the Wildcats have lost 15 straight games dating back to 2019. So, yeah. All right, a closer game expected between UCLA and Stanford, both Pac-12 teams 2-1 this season. The Bruins coming off that wild loss to Fresno State, though. 5.5-point favorites against the Cardinals. So over-under set at 58.5. Do you expect this to be a close one?
I do. I think this is a game that you look at and you're like, wait a second, UCLA not that long ago was, a top 20 team, top 15 team. They beat LSU. But Fresno State, that was a surprise last year. Not to a lot. I did actually pick Fresno State in that game. Jay Kaner was balling out. But I'm worried about the state of UCLA right now. If they feel sorry for themselves at all, this Stanford team, who we saw go push around USC, is a different team that started the season with Jack West at quarterback to when they made the change and went to Tanner McKee at quarterback. They do have some injuries at the running back position that I'm a little bit concerned about, but I think going out there to the Plains, Palo Alto, it's a sleepy environment. If UCLA feels sorry for themselves at all, Stanford will hang around. David Shaw is one of the better coaches of the game. I like Stanford. Give me the Cardinal in this one in the 5.5.
Yeah, I agree with you, Danny. When was the last time we ever talked about Stanford as being a program that gets coaches fired out there? They got USC to clean house. Like, how impressive is that? So when you talk about UCLA, they're in trouble here because their defense showed a lot of vulnerability. Look for this game to go back and forth, so I'm taking Stanford in the points. And I also like the over. This is going to be one of those Pac-12 after dark type games where it gets crazy toward the third quarter into the fourth quarter. So I do see a lot of points being scored, but I like Stanford here to win outright as well.
Next up, Clemson is down to number 9 in the AP poll. It's the lowest point in 6 years, going up against NC State this weekend. The Tigers, they're only favored by 10, not a huge number there. Lower expectations of the total points at 47. So what do? You go with Clemson here?
I think Clemson is due. Now, I'm kind of banking on what we've seen from Clemson over the past 7 or 8 years, being one of the most dominant teams in the country. It's been a struggle for DJ Uiagalelei so far, and the continuity between him and the offensive play caller, Tony Elliott, has not been there to this point, but they're due for a breakout game. Dabo Swinney said this week, you know what? We're not awful, and I agree with him. Losing Tyler Davis up front is a blow to the defensive line, but I still think Clemson is head and shoulders above the rest of the ACC, including NC State. Going to Raleigh can be tricky, but I think Clemson gets right in this spot here. NC State's a team that I think ultimately would be better than people thought this year, but not good enough to keep this one within that total. So give me Clemson, lay the 10.
I will take NC State in the points here. I think this is going to be the Wolfpack's Super Bowl or national title game. They're going to have to play their best against a team like Clemson. And because of the offense struggling right now for Clemson, that's why I like that sneaky defense of NC State to get in there and make something happen. So look for the Wolfpack to try to get people to forget about that bad loss that they had earlier in the year and focus on this game and say, man, if they just get 1 or 2 more plays, they could have beaten Clemson, but they'll definitely keep it within that point total. So I will say take NC State and the points here.
I wish you could have seen Danny's reaction when you just said that. 'Cause it was like one of those like.
I can't believe we're on opposite sides again.
What?
Again. I'm right. I'm tracking them down. Just write them down.
Write them all down. All right, last one. Not expected to be close here. We got the lucky number 21. So number 21, North Carolina, 21-point favorites at Georgia Tech. UNC has won 4 of the last 6 meetings in the series, including the most recent one in 2019. Over/under here set at 63.
So I think everybody's looking at this game and they're like, ooh, Georgia Tech, they must be good. Look how tight they played with Clemson. Clemson is good for a dud every single year against a team that's not very good. I think that was Clemson's dud. I think it was more about Clemson's ineptitude and figuring out things in the offense than it was about Georgia Tech. Meanwhile, North Carolina lays duds every year too, but they already had theirs. They got it out of the way when they lost in Blacksburg on that opening night. Sam Howell against Virginia had 5 touchdown passes. Now he's had a touchdown pass in 28 games. Every single game he started as North Carolina Tar Heel. I think this offense gets right. I think they go out there, have their way against Georgia Tech. So give me North Carolina. The other thing too is Virginia last week, high-scoring affair. Virginia's Brennan Armstrong might be one of the better quarterbacks in the ACC. I think that's why that turned into such a shootout. I don't think you see a similar type game. I don't think Georgia Tech has that much firepower on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm going to take the under 63 as well.
You know, Georgia Tech doesn't have that firepower on offense, but I like what they do on defense. They give teams problems within their back 7. So I like what they're presenting there. And it's just like when you ask someone that invites you to a party, man, who all going to be over there? That's how I feel about North Carolina. Which offense will show up? Is it going to be the sputtering one? Is it going to be the high-flying one? I don't know which one's going to show up, but I know Georgia Tech's defense is going to show up. So I'm going to take Georgia Tech in the points here to keep this one close.
All right, so you both like the under here, just difference of opinion on which team we like. Taking a look at your picks here for the Pac-12 and ACC. You both say to lay the points and take the over in that first game. Danny likes Stanford. Emery, you like both as well there. Danny, you like Clemson. And the biggest reaction here when Emery said NC State and the points. That's something that I will definitely be keeping an eye on this week. After the break, it's the best of the rest, including BYU and South Florida. The Cougars have won 12 straight home games dating back to last season. Can they do it again? That's next on the Cube. Our college football picks continue as we take a look at the best of the rest, and my eyes are on that first game right there, UMass at Coastal Carolina. If you didn't know, I'm a proud Minute woman, if that's the correct term there. South Florida will be taking on 15th ranked BYU, and UNLV looking for a Mountain West win over number 22 Fresno State. All right, it's college football happy hour. We're picking every ranked game against the spread. Danny Kanell, Emery Hunt. South Florida, the Bulldogs there, the Bulls, excuse me, they're facing a tough odds at 23-point underdogs heading into their matchup against number 15 ranked BYU Cougars. The over-under right now set at 53.5. What are your thoughts?
So I think BYU is one of the most underrated teams in the country. They're 3-0 against the Pac-12. They've got these impressive wins. I think they should be in the top 10, and they're not. Kalani Sitake has done an outstanding job getting this team back up to speed after losing Zach Wilson and playing a schedule that people criticized last year, saying was less than stellar. On the flip side, Jeff Scott is struggling somewhat in the transition year 2 of the head coach there for the Bulls. They are struggling mightily in the offensive side of the ball. I think that trend continues. Give me BYU, the Cougars. I think they're trying to get some respect on the national scene. I think they get it with a big blowout win against USF.
Absolutely. Lay those points with BYU. Now, the over depends on whether or not BYU comes out in those god-awful blue helmets, or if they come out in the white helmets with the Navy jerseys or the Ty Detmer jerseys, then they definitely are going to go over that number. I think that's going to be the case. So look for them to go over. And remember, 2 years ago, this was the game that introduced Jaron Hall to the rest of the world. He broke out against South Florida before he got injured. Look for that to be the case again. We may even see him springboard into a Heisman candidate by games in with how well he's going to play against the Bulls.
We're talking Heisman. All right, this next one's painful for me.
Yeah.
UMass headed to 17th ranked Coastal Carolina, a 36-point spread, over under at 66. Give me like a little ounce of hope, maybe a little.
All right, so I'll tell you, Jenny, I'm not going to go and take a side in this game. I don't know if I feel comfortable with that big number, but what I am going to look at is the total. So UMass, 0-3 start, they've been awful, but they've also been able to put up some points. Unfortunately, they can't stop anything on the defensive side of the ball. Coastal Carolina, Jamie Chadwell's squad, it is a really fun offense to watch. Grayson McCall, in his second year in the system, was close to perfection last year, is a master of running this system, but they've let some teams hang around. Kansas scored some points on them in garbage time. I think Coastal Carolina goes up and down the field. Nice and easy, though, Jen. Like, they won't bully them too bad. Okay. But I think UMass can put up some points in a backdoor cover situation. So give me the over in this one, over the 66.
I'm going to be nice now because I got trolled by UMass after my comments in week 1 saying whoever they play, take the opponent. So I will play nice in the sandbox. I will say this. UMass does a great job in showing up and playing for 60 minutes. Unfortunately, in this ball game, they're going to get blown out, and the over is going to hit. So lay those points with Coastal Carolina. The reason why Coastal is trying to climb up the rankings, they saw what happened last year when the powers that be kept them out of the playoffs conversation. So they're going to try to rack up these style point type wins. And lo and behold, here's a style point type opponent in UMass. Shout out to UMass, though, great university, awesome press box food as well.
Ah, see, that's what I like to hear. I used to serve the press box food to everyone coming to the games. All right, up next, we got a little Mountain West action. UNLV coming off a tough loss against Iowa State. I was actually at that game last week. This week, going up against number 22 ranked Fresno State. The Bulldogs expected to dominate a 30.5-point spread, over under 58.5.
Fresno State's Jake Haener is maybe the story of the college football season that people haven't been watching. He started off at Washington, lost out, couldn't get the playing time, so he transfers to Fresno State. Gets the win of his career last week in a game where you talk about heroics, playing banged up. He would not let his team lose. They also played Oregon. They were up 3 points against Oregon in the second half of that game. Oregon took over. Fresno State is a really good team. UNLV is not. I think they're looking at this potentially being a special season. You worry a little bit about the letdown opportunity here against a weaker opponent, but I don't think so. This is a team that is trying to do something special. They've been good the last few years. They've dominated this game. I think the trend continues. So go ahead and lay the 30.5.
Danny took my thunder. It's a letdown game, actually, so take UNLV in the points, but definitely hit the over.
All right, let's recap those picks that we just had for the best of the rest. Even though, Emery, you said you were going to be nice to me. I don't know
Look
if
at
I
that.
totally
You're the rest.
agree.
You're the rest.
I'm the rest. All right, you both like BYU, though. For the UMass Coastal Carolina game, both go with the over. For UNLV at Fresno State, we've got one going UNLV, and that's Emery. Danny Kanell liking Fresno State there. Thank you so much for joining us here on College Football Happy Hour, and a shout out to the UMass Amherst press food because it's good.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.